Well, ladies and gentlemen, another show from the Scouser and the Scot.
Today we've got a very good friend of ours. We've got Dan from Revival Black. How you doing, bud? How are you keeping?
I'm good, mate. How are you doing?
We're doing very well. We're in lockdown.
Yeah.
Enough said. I think that's the way the world is at the moment.
No.
I believe you've been manic busy over the last couple of weeks. So do you want to give us a quick insight of what you've been doing?
Yeah, by all means. So up until the last 2 weeks, we've been in the rehearsal room writing, and luckily we had the chance to go into the Motor Museum in Liverpool and record a brand new album that should be out later in the year. Fingers crossed. But obviously dealing with lockdown and stuff as well. It's to tour an album. You should be able to tour it rather than just kind of put it online and go like, here's an album. But and especially in the industry now where you kind of release an album to promote a tour rather than promote a tour with the album kind of thing. So it's difficult, but I'm hoping that we get back to some kind of shows or normality by the time that our single run and our album promotion would coincide. So God knows, but
fingers crossed. Have you got any rough dates, Dan, or?
Not yet, no. Literally, well, as of last week, we've only just left. So Loic, the guy who done the album, he lives in London now. So he's going to go back. He's back down there, and he'll be mixing it within the next week or so, and then going from there, get the artwork, all the rest of it, and then see where we can go with it.
That's pretty cool. Okay, well let's crack on with the questions, and we'll pick up back on that later on. Can you give us a bit of a background to your introduction to music? What kind of music you listened to back then?
Yeah, by all means. So, well, even before I started playing music, the first artist that I got into, it sounds ridiculous, but Fish from Marillion. So he's been my favourite artist since the beginning of time, kind of thing, because I grew up on it. My dad knows him due to when we used to go to the conventions in Haddington and all the rest of it, and Leamington Spa as well. So my first show was a Fish convention in Scotland, and it's a trial by fire really for a kid to listen to prog music, but it's the first thing that I'm used to, and that's what I grew up with. And then obviously along with that is your White Snakes and your Bad Company and your Free and your all of those kind of things. But yeah, like I always say this when someone asks who my favourite band, because they just go, sorry, what? But yeah, like more specifically Fish's own stuff rather than Marillion, even though I do love Marillion, but I grew up with the Vigil and the Scattering Crows and all the rest of it. So my favourite song ever is Scattering Crows.
Good choice.
So yeah, that's my kind of introduction to it. I know it's not necessarily the music I play, but that is where a lot of inspiration comes from, and a lot of what I know about music, because he's very outspoken, and that is as good as insight to the industry as anyone else. But just listen to Fish, even on his live streams at the moment throughout lockdown.
Yeah, well, I watch Fish on Friday with the wife.
Yeah, there you go.
So obviously he's a big inspiration to yourself, like, you know what I mean? And Fish writes songs which are life experiences which he's got and stuff like that. Do you do the same with Revival Black?
Well, I'd say yes and no. Fish has had way more life experience than I am. I'm 23, so I'm no stranger to knowing that I haven't had the largest amount of life, and for the past 2 years we've been stuck in the house kind of thing. So it's yes and no. Obviously, I'll take anything I know into the songs. I will base it around things that have happened as opposed to just nonsense. Because that's how I prefer. Like, for instance, I absolutely love Dio, but I couldn't go out and write about dragons and magicians, and because that's just not how I, formulate ideas. I think it's really interesting, but I couldn't do it. But as I say, I am still young, so things have got to have a certain idea of like, it's either experienced or happened to me, or I can make a judgment. But I'm not the most political writer like Fish would be, or I'm not. I don't know. He writes lyrics and then fits it to the music.
Yeah.
and I'm the total opposite way around. So I will often either have the music outright, and then I will work with that, or I may come up with a chorus, and they're like, that's going to be a chorus, and then you can base a song around that, or like a riff or an idea. So I don't know, the ideas he has and the delivery of words and songs is beautiful to me, but I could not replicate it unless I was doing that like type of project, which obviously I'm not. But I have the greatest respect for it because I find it ridiculous. Like, I don't know how he does it.
Quality, isn't it? It is real.
Yeah,
It is
I know.
So you would say that you've said that obviously Fish was the kind of guy that first got you interested in it. So beyond Fish, because obviously you don't sound like him, you don't write like him. So let's look at the singers that you actually inspired you to sound like you do. You know, who are the singers that you sat back and went, that's what I want to sound like, or that's the kind of sound that I want, and what made you want to be a front man in a band? Who were they?
I'd say, I think above all, David Coverdale, because I've always been, again, similar to Fish, I've always been surrounded by Whitesnake. And when you look at the really old, like the bluesier side of it, all the way through to the Steve Vai stuff, all the way through to what he's doing now, he's still giving 110%. Obviously, his range may have changed now, depending on, compared to like the 70s and the 80s, but the bluesiness and the delivery and the rawness and all of that speaks volumes to me. If I could have the soul that David Coverdale does and deliver it like that, then that would just be, everything. Because again, it's totally different to the Fish thing, because Fish borderline talks, and he's a lyricist more than whereas when I'm thinking of singers, I'll think of Coverdale or Paul Rodgers, because again, it's the bluesy delivery. Like, I absolutely love Paul Rodgers. I've never studied him in the way that I have with Coverdale, but I've always been surrounded by it, and only recently, which sounds outrageous, but I've only recently started listening to the whole catalogue of the Bad Company and Free stuff, and I'm just sitting here going like, this is absolutely stupid. You know what I mean? For someone to be able to just easily reel things off. So I've like, even now, I'm still listening to a lot of classic singers, just going, how are you doing that? And how can I not rip you off, but learn from it and go, that's a great lick. Let's see if I can put it in my repertoire or something like that without being Paul Rodgers or David Coverdale. Because obviously I'm a lot Scouser than they are. So so the tone will be a little bit different anyway, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, I must admit, because I'm a lot older than you, and I was into Whitesnake. I was going to see Whitesnake in the late 70s. Yeah. So that's when I loved them, was at the Blues, when they did the live album. And I remember going to see them in the Love Hunter tour. And that's when I loved them. That sound was just absolutely amazing. And when I was singing in a band, I just wished I could have sung like him. I didn't have the soulful side that you've got and he's got. But him and him and Rodgers and people like that they just had that sound to them. The deep soul. Amazing.
Because he's as good a rock singer as he's a blues singer. When you see him just do like covers of 12-bar blues songs, or like the R&B kind of stuff, he can smash that out as well. Like, it's no issue at all.
Yeah.
And weirdly enough, with the Love Hunter album, when Jacaranda Records opened in Liverpool, I was the first person to buy the vinyl from there, and it was the Love Hunter album, and it was signed by all the band and like the original lineup, and it was £2 because they didn't know it was signed. So I managed to sneak that one. But yeah, little trivia.
Yeah, that's cool, mate. That's cool. Good choice. Good choices.
Yeah. So obviously, everyone knows you from Revival Black. I've known you a bit longer than that.
Yeah.
Can you give everyone a bit of an insight to your past music journey? What your bands were you in beforehand? And
absolutely. So I think, as a lot of people start, I was in a school band, and that was my first kind of, what am I doing with music? Let's have a go. Everyone would have lessons in school. So I used to, miss every couple of lessons to play guitar and stuff. That's just how it works. And I think the first thing I done was like a battle of the bandsy kind of thing. Because that's again, especially in a scene, in the Liverpool scene, where when you grow up and there's not a great deal of rock promoters at all. And the majority of promoters are like pay to play. And as me and Ian will know, we've been through all of this in Liverpool. The first proper band I was in, they're called Fall in Paradise. And that's when I got onto the Liverpool scene and started actually playing shows, which I believe was the first time I may have played with you. And literally in my bedroom in there, I still have all of the posters I used to play for all of these local shows. So the whole wall's lined up, and I've literally just found the 12 gauge, which for those of you who don't know, Ian was in a band called 12 gauge, and it was their EP launch, I think, and it was in the O2 Academy, and I've got the poster still up on the wall in there. So I wanted to mention that because I'll go and get it by the end. But so I've got a commemorative wall of basically everything we used to do, going through all of the Picket and the O2 Academy and the Mask, as it was probably called then, all the venues in Liverpool from, I don't know, was that almost 10 years ago now, I imagine? Because I started off playing in the Zanzibar Club in Liverpool, and I had a residency of a dinner time playing acoustic when I was about 13. So I probably shouldn't have been in there, but it's closed down now, so I can say that probably.
But that's a great loss, that as well.
Honestly, that is seriously sad, because again, when we done our last album launch, obviously you were on the bill as well, and that was in Zanzibar. And there's a lot of memories that disappear when somewhere like that closes down, and it really is quite sad, to be honest.
It's really a big loss to the Liverpool music industry, I think.
And to be honest with you, Liverpool, I mean, obviously I'm not from Liverpool. I only moved here like coming up 2 years ago. So I was shocked because I, like everybody else, because of the musical background that Liverpool has, I mean, Christ, if it wasn't for the Beatles, music wouldn't be the way it is. It's as simple as that. But I was shocked when I came here at just how poor the rock scene was, and original music in Merseyside. It was terrible compared to, I'd been in West Yorkshire, that's where I lived beforehand, and that was way better. And Manchester. So when I came here, the first show I was going to set up was in the Zanzibar through Ian. Right. And then the next thing, of course, COVID came, and then it went. And I just, other than that, the only other one I've ever been in, I think, is EBGBs. It's the last thing this city needed. Really.
Yeah, it really is. I always hate saying that Liverpool doesn't have the greatest rock scene, because, like, obviously there'll be arguments for and against it, and as there would be with any city in the world. But considering such the rich heritage and the amount of rock bands that there have been, because even looking at the wall in there, there's hundreds of bands now that aren't still around, unfortunately, but those musicians, the 4 or 5 musicians in every single one of those bands. So the amount of rock musicians coming from Liverpool is unreal, and I know loads. But the sad thing is, until we started branching out and moving across the UK, it really is difficult, because you end up going in a bit of a cycle.
And of course, when I'm saying about the scene, I'm not talking about musicians or the bands. I'm talking about the lack of shows, the lack of venues, the lack of fan base for rock. It seems to be jangly pop and bloody covers and acoustic and all that stuff. And I'm not knocking any of them, but my God, come on. A city the size of Liverpool, we should have a thriving rock scene.
No, you're totally right. And we have a large amount of indie and shoegaze and that kind of thing. And I know a lot of those musicians who are doing fantastic, and due to Spotify and all the rest of it, they've been playlisted, and there's huge followings for it. But with rock, and especially in Liverpool, it is really difficult. Going back, so the first band I was in was Fall in Paradise, and then the next band that anyone would know me from, and the one that we eventually did break out to Liverpool and ventured further, was Black Diamond. And I was in that band for a fair few years during my college years. And it would be a case of where we wouldn't really stick around college because every single week we'd be playing 3 or 4 shows by the weekend. So you'd pop in on the Monday. And then luckily, I was doing a performance music course, so it all counts towards it anyway. Because the argument there was, I'm doing exactly what I'm there for. So by that logic, I should be fine to go down to London and play a show, which they weren't too bothered about, to be honest with you. But that was the kind of run up. And that is also where I met 2 of the lads in the current lineup of Revival Black, which is why when I was in those bands of Four Pounds and Black Diamond, we played alongside the musicians that I'm with in Revival Black plenty of times. So when the call came, that was perfect. I knew who they all were, and I knew they were great lads.
Yeah, so that's good, because that just takes us neatly on to the next question, which is about Revival Black. You know, when you got together with the guys, created Revival Black, what kind of generated that, and what was your initial plans? You know, what were you out to do? And I mean, I don't mean world domination. I just mean, like, what was the feeling that you had that you wanted to do? Why did you want to create Revival Black?
That's a really good. It's interestingly worded as well, because when I joined the lads, I basically got the call on my birthday. I think it was off Ash, and he kind of went, "Do you want to do a band?" And I was like, "Yeah, I haven't," because before this point, I hadn't done anything for about 2 years. So I was sitting there on my bum, going out, taking some photos sometimes, because I do that, you know, every now and again. And I wasn't doing anything. And I know it's a waste of life, really, because I've always wanted to be a singer. And then when I was trying to do my own thing, and I was going, right, well, can I get a drummer? Can I get something? You couldn't find anyone. Or if I could, there's the issues of commitment or money or time or girlfriends. Like there's so many things where it's really difficult to find 3, 4, 5 people who all want the same thing. And I never started as a vocalist, so I used to. Well, I've always sang, but by trade I'm a guitarist. So the first time I was in a band, I was the guitarist, and we were trying to find a singer. And because we couldn't find a singer, I was like, all right, well, I'll do it while we find someone. And then we never found anyone, so I've just continued to sing. And then the same with Fallen Pirates and Black Diamond, I was always the singer and guitarist. So when Ash called me and I was joining this group of lads, it was under the guise of being a singer. And I'd never done that. So when I first joined the lads and we all jammed and stuff, I didn't know what to do because it was like, what do I do with my hands? Do I do that? So I'll find myself even on stage now, sometimes just swinging my hands everywhere, because you could hide behind the guitar and you could swing it around and you can run around. And but the second you're just holding a microphone, you just go, right, well, this is a bit weird now. What do I do? So it's been a learning curve in that way. So that's been great, because it's something I'd always thought of, in the sense of I've always loved to just run around and sing, and it's so much easier. But when we started writing music, and compared to what it was originally, we kind of just went, let's just create a whole new project or album or whatever band or whatever you want to call it. So we went, right, okay, let's create this thing, Revival Black. Let's start a whole new blank slate, because the music we were writing compared to what they used to write is totally different. And there's elements of that on the first album where you can hear some of the songs that we've gelled for a while and they had before I joined. And then there's some of the songs where after I joined, and this was the whole new sound. So it was really interesting, because on the Step in Line album, you can really hear a whole variety of songs, which is why doing this recent record, it's been really fun to knuckle down and get some songs done. But the aim wasn't anything other than, let's just write some really great music and play some music, because it's never been anything other than I would just love to play music. And I don't care whether it's in a pub or in a club or an arena, or I've always just had because I've played to One Man and His Dog in the Picket in Liverpool, and I've played to bigger venues now. We've done Winter's End like last year and stuff. So there's the whole spectrum, but as long as we're playing music that ideally that I've wrote, I'm not saying I'd love to be in a cover band forever because that would get quite stale, I believe. But playing music that you've wrote and for people to respond to it in a good way, or just to even enjoy the music you wrote, is like the weirdest thing in the world. It really is, because again, with these bands that I've been in throughout, growing up, and sometimes you just feel like you're playing at an audience rather than with, and because it's all right, because everyone would go to see their friend's band, and then you'd have this thing where the crowd would be there for their friend's band and then just filter out, and then it would be like a round robin of like different fan groups, which is usually friends and family when you're starting out, because that's just what it is. And so the second it starts becoming this thing where you're writing music and people are going, I actually enjoy this, it's surreal. It's absolutely surreal. And to have that feeling now where we can release music and people that I don't know are responding well to it or enjoying it or would buy a ticket to see it, that is the most amazing thing in the world to me. So the idea behind Revival Black was just to go, we're really enjoying writing this music together. Let's put it out, because when we released our first album, we didn't have a fan base really. We'd only just changed our name. We had this Revival Black brand, and we had a few people who were aware of the musicians in the band. But when we released the album, there wasn't a great deal of people who reciprocated, because there was only a set amount of people who had a clue who we were.
I think it helped you, Daniel, though, when people like New Wave of Classic Rock, they were one of the first that I saw that kind of started spouting about you, about Revival Black, and really talking you up. And that's when I kind of first noticed, because I'm new to certainly not, so I'd never seen any of the other previous bands, so I've no idea whether your voice sounds the same now as it did then, so I've no background in that at all. But that was when I first started noticing you, was because of them. And then I saw others talking about you, and that's the great thing nowadays about these Facebook pages, these groups, these actual people who are passionate about music. And you struck a chord, your band struck a chord with them quite clearly.
Well, that's pretty much where my anecdote then was going to leave off, because until we hit Facebook and found New Wave of Classic Rock, it's ridiculous what a great thing it is, because it's almost like a ready-made fan base for any rock bands who want to tap into that. And I know it's got like New Wave of Classic Rock, and some people go, well, we're not classic rock, or we're not, but it's not about that. And the guys themselves, I've seen them say it's not about the idea of classic rock. It's very much just a name to encompass all new rock bands within the past, I think it was 10 years or something they said. But there's a lot of people there. There's thousands of people there just waiting to listen to new music. And honestly, I think you'd be silly to not utilize that, because after we initially went to New Wave and we went, hi, we're Revival Black kind of thing, this is our music, everything changed. And we had the confidence to then tour an album, and we knew people were going to turn up, which is unreal, because again, this isn't friends and family going to the shows. This is an audience. This is people who love rock music, and they want to give to the band. And to have 4, 5, 6 people who run who don't want to do anything but just support bands, because as I say before, there's pay to play promoters and stuff that you go through your entire life, and then there's always going to be people who try and, because that's just the nature of life, where people are going to try and rip you off, or people are going to try and benefit themselves, because that's, at the end of the day, people will only care about themselves, because you're stuck with yourself for the rest of your life. But for have 5 or 6 people there who just want to give to people and aren't necessarily taking anything at all, is like mind blowing, because there's very, very few people in the industry, especially that I've met. I can name probably on two hands the people who are just out there to help and not to reap. And I think that is honestly the most incredible thing. And that's why I always say I am the biggest advocate for the group and for just using Facebook in general to promote yourself and to gain a fan base, because if it's already there for you, you may as well just go right ahead and just utilize it, because especially with the fans are some of the nicest people I've ever met as well. Because, you know, you'll go across the country and you'll often find the same people at several different shows.
Yeah.
And you'll know that they live in bloody Scotland or something, and then you'll be down in Kent, and then they'll turn up and you'll go, you know, what's that about? And I can honestly say I've made quite a few friends and everything just from both the people who are helping out and the people who support your music, because don't forget, those people will be there for your entire career. Because if they like what you're doing, that'll be a part of your legacy in years to come when you move on and do whatever else you're doing. So yeah, I think it's really important to one, be nice to everybody, and to just utilize what's available to you.
Yeah, 100%.
One of the things you touched on it before, Dan, it's how important do you think it is to have every member of the band pushing in the right direction, have a well-defined goal, committed equally, all wanting to pull the same way and have a good chemistry?
Yeah. It's I think personally that is crucial. I mean, there's been times when we've all sat there and said, like, is this all what we want? Because you have to have that discussion with the band, because if you're not all on the same page, it is very difficult. And as I say, when I was touching on it before, when I was trying to create a band before all of this started, it's like people, if everyone's not firing on 100%, you're only running on 20, 40, 60, 80, depends on how many band members you've got. But you're losing a lack of firepower there. Say you've got 4 members and 2 of them don't want it, you're running on 50%. And when a band is operating on all cylinders and you're going, like, everybody is using things like social media correctly, and, you know, everyone's firing out in different ways, and you can guarantee that people will go, oh, have you seen this thing, or have you seen this thing? Because you are creating such a wider spectrum. And not only with sharing things, but just if everyone's got their own thing that they do within the band, and then, you know, one person's not doing everything. Because again, it's a commitment thing, and it can kind of weed people out and go, oh yeah, well, do you really want it as much as you say you want it? Because, you know, we could be doing so much more, and there's always more we can do. Always. And even if you think you're doing everything, there might be really cool ways to engage with people, or there might be, you know, things that you're missing out on. Like, there's some bands like Massive Wagons, for instance, who are absolutely incredible at what they do. You can tell all of them are on full cylinders because there's stuff to do, and they're creating content like left, right, and centre, because they do their Patreon thing, and they've got their own warehouse, and they're releasing extra things, far more than what anyone else would be doing. Just to give back to the fans who want to, you know, put a bit extra in and go, I sign up for this. And that is incredible, because that just shows that they really, really care, and they really, really want to make it. And I'd be stupid to say that all bands wouldn't want to make it, because part of, like, because all I want to do is play music, but it would be amazing if you can get bigger and bigger and bigger, but that's not necessarily the end goal. But I'd be stupid to say it's not somebody's end goal, because, you know, everyone wants to be the biggest artist in the world. You know what I mean?
I think one of the things there, which I'd actually 100% agree with you on, which I think you're flirting around it, is how much work the likes of yourself, Massive Wagons, all the other bands on the scene who are, like, on the cusp of putting in, how many hours they are actually putting, looking at all your social media, looking at different ventures, looking at different things, how much time they're spending together. And one of the key things, which I know what we thought about, is how much time you actually spend if you are in a band.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's like, you know, and I know.
Yeah.
I'm on the phone to Jamie virtually every day.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And the rest of the lads every day messaging them saying, what are we doing? Blah, blah, blah. We've got lists. And I'm sure, like, you know, you guys are the same. So this is for people who are wanting to understand the behind the scenes of a band.
Yeah.
And how to improve theirs. And one of the main things I feel is communication. Everyone's got to be chirping up.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like a family where...
Absolutely.
You're not going to get on with everyone every day of the week.
Mm.
You are going to have fallouts, but you've got to brush that aside, come back stronger, and like work it out. And like sometimes you have to do things which people don't agree with. However, it's the effort which needs to be put in is what we were saying. Like, you know, so
just going with what you've just said there as well. It's luckily I'm in a band where I am best mates with the 4 other members in the band.
Yeah.
That luckily we're also Scouts, with the exception one. So if somebody's not doing anything, we can normally go like, "You're not doing this, sort it out," kind of thing. We have the relationship where we can say to each other, you know, you need to start doing this or blah blah, and nobody's offended by it. But we just know that that's what we've got to do. And being in a band is not easy. It's not, the fun bit is playing shows.
Yeah.
Like that's the fun bit. But that's like 5% of what to, because everything you do up until the show is work. It's like a job. And we're not stupid. Like obviously, especially at the moment when we can't gig, there's all sorts of things going on where you're just going like, oh, it's quite hard to maintain what you're doing, because it's every day, and you there's no like fun bit of the thing. Even though obviously we love being in a band, but you can't go on a stage with your mates and play to an audience at the moment. So there's ways and means of getting around that. But like we've been lucky enough to be writing an album, so without lockdown, I don't even know if we would have got the album down, because we were gifted that much time to write effectively, but that was at the cost of being mid-tour on our debut album and that going down the drain. So, and that was disheartening. And when that happened, everyone was like, this is crap. And then after the first lockdown, it's quite sad, because obviously everyone's bound up and wants to go like, can't we just play a gig kind of thing? And a lot of what you get into a band for was took away. And that's why it's really important to know how much work is involved, because it can be crap and things can happen like this where you'd never expect that. And those who are combating that and thriving in it really show how much work they're putting in to the band, especially at the moment.
I think Daniel, one of the things, I can't remember who said it, but there was somebody that I was watching, or maybe I even read it, and they were saying that for if you're serious about your music, for every hour you do of music, you're doing 4 hours of business if you wanted to succeed. And business is everything except writing music, practicing music, and that's what they say. If you seriously want to make a living out of doing music, it's 1 in 4. 1 hour music, 4 hours work.
Absolutely. I barely sleep, because even when there's always something to do. So I'll normally go to bed at like 4 a.m. And until then, I don't switch off. Like it's always just what's going on. And there's no like downtime of it. And it's great because we still manage to rehearse at the moment. So I'm still with the lads 2, 3, 4 nights a week anyway. And then when we're at practice and playing the music, again, writing, granted, is the fun bit. But then when we're there, we go, right, well, there's this much merch to send out. What can we do on the website? This is what's happening. We've got a gig coming soon, blah, blah. We need to contact them, blah. And it just goes on and on and on. But you learn to love that anyway if you want this to be your life. Because at the end of the day, like, if I can make a living in music, that I'm happy.
Yeah,
like, so it's one of those things, isn't it? But
So let's talk about singing now. And I'm really glad that you said earlier that you never intended being a singer, because that really pissed me off. How the hell can you say? How can you sound the way you do and you never even wanted to be a singer? And all I wanted to do was be, well, actually, I wanted to be a drummer, but I realised it was on stage, so there was no way I was doing that.
And I can't do that.
So, but can we talk about the singing? So, since you became like an out-and-out singer, have you ever had? So let's cover everything. This is aimed at young vocalists or young people that's thinking about becoming a vocalist. So have you ever had singing lessons? Do you do singing exercises? Do you do things like, or do you have a regime for protecting your voice, your vocal cords, etc.? Could you talk us through that whole thing?
Right. I'm going to give you two answers now. I'm going to precursor this by saying what everybody listening should do. And then I'll divulge into what I do. So I would recommend anybody who wants to sing, absolutely go. There's no embarrassment or harm or anything going to see a vocal coach, because the best thing you can do is understand your own voice. Because at the end of the day, it's an instrument. And unfortunately, as I've come to learn, it's an instrument that you can't just put on the shelf and look after and polish it up and restring it. It is you. And that is exercise, diet, cold, flu, everything affects that. So do not be ashamed to go to a vocal coach just to learn what your own range is or how you protect it when you sing. You know, if you are singing, do you do anything wrong, or is there any tension when you try? All of these things affect dramatically what you sound like and the duration of your voice, because as I've learned, I started singing pretty much by accident because we couldn't find a singer. And my habits are absolutely ridiculous. To the point where, well, originally when I was younger, I thought, right, to be a really good rock singer, I just need to growl. And that's what you do. You just go, and you force everything out. And oh my God, has that put me in the worst state ever for vocals? Because even now I go, all right, well, I must, everyone loves a big loud note, so I'm going to growl dead loud. And all you do is you tense up here. And then it's the worst thing you can have is tension when you sing. Like the worst thing ever, because your vocal cords basically do that when you sing. And when you tense and they're just rubbing against each other. So that has meant that I'd come off stage and I wouldn't be able to speak for about a week. And that happens a lot. And especially when I was, because I think in the band Black Diamond, I gigged something daft, like it was over 100, 200 shows in a year. And after every single one of them, I couldn't speak. And long term, I imagine that is awful. I haven't yet gone to a doctor and went, can you have a look at my throat? Out of sheer fright, I think, because I don't want them to come back and go, you've absolutely butchered your throat, kind of thing. But now I always warm up. And I always recommend you do warm up, because that's the only way your voice is going to get loose, and it's not just going to tense up when you start randomly trying to go for notes. I'll always run up and down a few scales, or vocal fry, so the sound when you go really low in your range. That's a really good way of warming your vocals up. There's a few things, there's a billion things online that you can do, but as long as you know your own range, you know what you're going to be tackling when you do sing, because obviously I go really high sometimes. So I will then look at things for falsetto. Obviously, a lot of singers might not do that, so you might not need to look at, especially a lot of rock singers, you're not just going to go and do a Justin Hawkins and stuff, going dead high and, all the rest of it. But it's important to know your own voice and act accordingly, because if you know what range you're going to be singing in, you can warm up that area of your vocals and the different sounds, so the R and O sounds all access different parts of your voice.
How often do you, how long do you actually warm up before a show then?
I try for about 15, 20 minutes if possible. Sometimes, for instance, at like festival sets, when you kind of turn up and then everything's going on, and by the time you know it, you're on stage. It can be really difficult to do that. So even if I run the toilet, prior to the gig and just start going over a few things or anything you can. Because when I used to do all these shows when I was younger, I didn't do any. And you really kind of come off stage and go, I felt that. Because you'll feel like red raw in your throat and it'll be a bit horrible. And especially when you start doing tours and you night after night after night. And even in the studio where I've just been, I was trying to do a song a day. But then on some days, because obviously you do everything like 10 times over and you go, all right, let's do that. Let's try it this way and let's try a bit harder or softer. You end up just going through your voice. And on the day after, you might go, oh, I could do a really easy song today because there's no way I can hit like that huge note. So for you to be really careful and to try and look after yourself as much as possible, it just means that you'll be able to give 110% every single night and not have to worry about what you can and can't sing that night, which I've had to do hundreds of times, which is just the worst.
So obviously COVID struck last year. What drives you and the band to keep on doing what you actually are doing? How important is it to you personally?
Music's my life. Like that. The long and short of it, regardless of what I say now, is like I don't want to do anything else. I never have. When I was growing up, thanks to my dad primarily, it's like I by the time I was 16, I'd been to over 1,000 gigs.
Wow.
So I used to, like, I'd go to school and then 2 or 3 nights a week, I'd go to Manchester and then just go to a gig and I'd be in school the next day kind of thing. And then, so I've always been surrounded by music. Like, that's just all I know. Like, I might be crap at anything else, but if you ask me about modern rock bands or a lot of classic rock, I'll know a bit, at least, just because I just want to surround myself with music. So to be in this industry as I grow up or as I continue through my life, or, you know, that is all I want, to be honest. Whether it's, like I said before, I don't mind if I'm playing the O2 Academy or I'm playing the Echo Arena. I would love to do both, all as much as possible. But if I make a living in music and I can sustain myself doing what I really love doing, which is creating music and you know, just writing songs or being surrounded by it in any capacity, really, that I'd be happy. But going back to what we said earlier about like how much work is it, I think if you don't truly love music, you're gonna probably struggle.
Yeah.
And I can speak on behalf of a lot of people there, I think, because yeah, literally, because even when I was sitting in the studio, I was sitting there because, you know, because I only do vocals and the odd bit on the album. There'll be times when we're doing solos or something, and then it's like a day or two of that. And then you just sit there going, like, if I didn't love music, this would be brutal. Because it's not an office job. You don't go home at like 6 p.m. and then you carry on with your life. It's like in the studio, for instance, we were getting there at like 7, 8 a.m. and staying until about midnight every single day, like for 2 weeks. So and you go insane, and especially the level of detail, because I think, again, that's something that shows between musicians, is like, do you care about this one odd note that no one's really going to hear in a song, and then you argue over it for a bit because it's that important to you, you know, stupid stuff, because obviously you'll know what I'm talking about. It's like there'll be something that won't matter to anybody but the band, and it always causes fights because everyone's going, no, I think this should happen, kind of thing. And it's like, at the end of the day, no one's going to know regardless, but it's like attention to detail, isn't it? It's having that vision over like everything you do. And that's what I'm saying. If you didn't love music, you just lose the plot, I think. But luckily we do. So this is what we sign up for. But no, I absolutely love it, because it is something you can laugh at afterwards and go, oh, do you remember when we argued over that semitone?
Yeah, you're right. Can we talk now about, it's good because you just talked about being in the studio and the length of time you were there. So can you talk us through the process of songwriting in Revival Black? So even if you just talk about this album that you've currently been recording, you know, how the process was with that, Daniel.
I think it's interesting to talk about this one really, because obviously the entire album was written during lockdown. So whatever we would have written, it would be totally different regardless because of where we are. A lot of it was on Google Drive, which is new to us because normally you used to just go into the rehearsal room, jam stuff, get annoyed with something and pick up something else and then, you know, run with that one. But, and a lot of credit to Rimmer, our lead guitarist here. But during lockdown, he just kept churning out riffs, like all the time. And they were all of like a really good standard. And it's been so easy to work with because obviously, unfortunately, due to furlough and stuff, it means everyone's had a lot more time. The downside is we couldn't, especially during the first lockdown, like since because of workplaces and our workplace being the rehearsal room, we were able to go in more and work with the ideas. But especially at first, it was an absolute nightmare because we didn't know what to do. So what would happen is Rimmer's basically have all our names on a Google Drive and then like ideas and then blah, blah. And then there'd be like a billion ideas from each person. And as I say, Rimmer just kept churning them out. And then when we finally got back into the rehearsal room, we'd go, right, here's this idea. And it's not always just a riff. Sometimes you have a full song and then we'd all sit down with it and go, all right, well, this is fantastic. This can change. I really like the chorus of that idea actually. And should we mix it with that verse? And a very like, I think Alter Bridge style of working, because I know Miles and Tremonti do that where they'll have like a database of songs and then they'll go, all right, well, that verse from 2002 works really well with this kind of thing. But what I tend to do, especially when I haven't quite got some of the melodies down, is just sing utter gibberish over the top of what we're writing, because I really like, even if I don't know what I'm singing yet, to have the sense of a song and for the band to hear it as a song straight away, I think is quite important, because then you get familiar with some ideas, and then as you play over it and over it, some melodies kind of pop out and you go, I've sang this one 3 or 4 times. That's quite interesting. Why do I keep going back to that one? And then the weirdest thing about that is on the album now, I'd say about 95% of the first melodies I came up with just doing that kind of thing are the ones that are on the final. Because what would happen is when I was writing the lyrics, I'd go, I might change that. I don't know how I feel. And then I'd come in and do something else. Then they'd look at me and go, have you changed that? I was like, yeah, what do you think? Yeah, no, why have you? No. So it's been interesting to just kind of mess around with songs, but the vibe of the album in general is so much more, I would say, mature than the first one. Like on the first one, it's very much like rock and roll. This is bloody 10 songs that are all just fast and quite intense. And this time it's been like crafted. So we've just looked at it totally differently, and then we put piano on some songs and we put acoustic on some songs, and just playing with dynamics, and I know it just sounds like random music terms because anyone would say that, but the sound overall is like, I don't say drastically different because it still sounds like the latter half of what we wrote on the first album. So your Wide Awakes and you know that kind of thing, but I think it's just, there's a lot more thought got into this one compared to the first one, and there's different ideas. Like I literally bought a keyboard last November just to start messing around with, and now there's piano on some of the songs, and a few more like epic-y and slower ones, which is new ground for us completely because like we've never written slow songs before. So it's been really, I don't know, it's been really fun just to mess around with stuff. And when you get to the studio, we had a whole different column on our whiteboard for like noises and like piano and that kind of thing, and just stuff that we'd never usually do. And it's creatively, it's been like amazing. It really has been. But I think that's how lockdowns kind of impacted people, and it makes you think outside the box, because especially for those people who live far away or can't always rehearse or haven't got a rehearsal room because it's closed or anything like that, it's a totally different way of working.
The ironic thing could be here, Daniel, that most musicians exist to perform.
Yeah.
You know, that's where they get the buzz. And everybody's bemoaned the fact that they haven't been able to gig for a year now. But the reality of it is like for a band like yourself, you may just have discovered a way of writing and recording and and bringing out something that had it not been for that, you may never have, it may have taken you years to come to that, or maybe never at all.
You're very right, and it's a blessed of a curse, really, isn't it? Because at the cost of us creating what, like, I think miles better than our first album, I just do. I think everything about it's a lot better. Having said that, the stuff that unfortunately the band now can't complete, like we had Steelhouse Festival, Ramblin' Man, we had the rest of our tour to complete, we had, all these things. And so you kind of pay for one thing, but then gain in the other. And the balance is, would I rather go into the studio and create an amazing album, or would I rather play some fantastic gigs? And I don't know if I can choose one of them.
I can choose for you, Daniel. The best thing to do is to play a brilliant gig, a brilliant festival with the best songs that you've ever written.
Which is why I'm really hoping that we get something back soon, because, geez, it's like, it has been difficult. And I'm sure you can vouch for that as well, because obviously being involved with music, it's the one thing that every band goes towards, and like we can't have it. So it's a coping mechanism of like how you get beyond that kind of thing. And I don't know. It's been difficult. I've suffered in the first lockdown. I was going insane because I'm just sitting here going, what is the point? Because everything I've done for the past year, 2 years, it just doesn't matter now because we can't go out. So mentally, it's been challenging. My heart goes out to every single person who is struggling, especially in the creative industry, because it's just kind of, it's not just us. it's everyone to do with theatres, roadies, venues, promoters, blah, 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 everything. And it just comes to a standstill overnight. But I do think that we've adapted in a way that was not expected. Not just us, but like the industry again. It's like the rise of all these live streams that like, it was really quite clever, I think. But I don't think that can replace the real thing. And everyone will probably agree. So I'm just basically stating the obvious. But the sooner it can come back, the sooner we can kind of celebrate, everything that we were celebrating a year ago before this all started. And that's for everybody. So yeah, as I say, I did struggle, but I think now that there's a kind of stride and everybody's kind of getting used to it, I feel like we can all start making moves towards what will eventually be normality and come back to normal. Definitely.
So from our perspective, what are your short, medium, long terms for yourself and Revival Black?
I think they're very, very much similar between myself and Revival Black. I know I can speak on behalf of all the lads when it's just like, we would love to get this album out. That album coming out will depend on multiple factors, including when gigs come back, because we don't want to release an album that we can't tour. Is that it's difficult, isn't it? Yeah. And normally, again, tour's part of your PR now, so that's the way that you can get the music out, and it always has been. But it's the opposite way around in terms of any money in the industry. It's more like, we're going to release this album so we can go on tour, because again, that's where most of the sales and the money would come in, would be from live shows and ticket sales and all the rest of it. So we would obviously love to tour. We obviously have many gigs booked that we can't do and keep getting postponed. And again, all the festivals that we were planning on playing, obviously we hope that they are on this summer. Whether that's the case or not, I can't tell you. But No. It's just, it is what it is. But long term, I think it's just continue to write what we love. Myself and the band included. I've been fortunate enough to be with these lads throughout the whole of lockdown. I'm fortunate enough to have worked with Mike Gray, and you know, there's so many creative avenues where I'm happy. I really am. Obviously, as I've said a few times in this interview, like if I made enough money to sustain myself within music in whatever capacity, that would make my life, because I would be surrounded by it, and that's all that matters to me. But obviously, to be the biggest band in the world's great. It's, you know, but that's so many factors of things and stuff that, you know, a lot of them may be uncontrollable, a lot of them may be controllable. But all we can do is put out what we believe in, which I believe this album's, you know, that I really love the music on it. That's, as a fan and a writer of it, because again, there's 5 lads there and we all listen to different stuff, but for the 5 people to go, I really like this, that's kind of good, because we've all heard a lot of music, and, you know, I've been to a billion gigs and all the rest of it, so I know what I like in terms of music, and I'm genuinely quite pleased. To be honest with you.
That's cool, mate.
And to go to gigs.
Oh yeah.
Just to go to gigs. Never mind playing them, like, because like I go to whatever anyway. I go all over the place just to watch stuff. So I can't wait to just be with some people or friends, or not even friends, just anybody, and go sing along to something, which is like the most therapeutic thing in the world. So yeah, I just can't wait, to be honest.
So final question then, Daniel.
Yeah.
Let's fast forward into the future. When you're looking back at your career, and, you know, let's say somebody's interviewing you, asking you to talk about it, what would success look like to you? Just
to have impacted somebody. I think it doesn't matter how many people. I think if you can, well, define a success of it in a general way and in my own interpretation. I keep saying it, but success for myself would be just to be surrounded by this forever. Again, if I'm comfortable and happy, and I have all the friends I've made so far, and, you know, I can still speak to you in 10, 20, 30 years time, that's amazing, because, you know, it's lifelong friendships and music and everything. That's what could be better.
Amen, brother. Amen.
It is like a family. Our community is like a family, and that's what I love about it.
It absolutely is. I've known you for at least 10 years. Something like that. You know, and I'm only 23. So like that's the thing. Like I started when I was 13, and I'm still speaking to you now.
Yeah.
Knowing, and you know, we've shared experiences, and we can laugh about stuff, and that's
definitely
so great. And again, it's the same people on the way up and on the way down. So we'll always be here, kind of thing. And in a general success terms, if like I began saying, if I ever put something out and it's impacted someone's life in any way, or they still listen to it in 20 years, or, you know, they go, oh my God, that's that guy who sang that one. You know, anything that is enough for me, because to have done something for then somebody else to have gone, oh wow, that kind of thing. That is all you could ever ask for, isn't it? Because that is probably really why you go into music.
It's quite funny that, because you mentioned Mike Gray, and that's something that you actually experienced with him, because you were singing songs that he wrote 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that made that people, you see it on Facebook going, oh, that song, I remember when I was this and my son was born and we played this all the time. And that's what you're going to get. That's what you're going to have.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because one of my favourite songs ever was Counts for Nothing. And I got the CD in a classic rock magazine. And it was the Red, White and Blues CD, you know, the little cover mount things. And I had about 5 or 6 songs from the Red, White and Blues album. And I did not know until about a year and a half, 2 years ago, that Mike Gray was in Red, White and Blues. And I think it was when Kim was singing for Mike. and I heard them do Counts for Nothing, and I went, like what? So I then obviously went and viewed what Mike was up to and all the rest of it, and it said Mike as of Red, White and Blues. I was like, get lost, because I seen them support Chickenfoot and Whitesnake and Lynyrd Skynyrd as well, I think. And I didn't know it was him. So I'm up there singing one of my favourite songs ever, which is Counts for Nothing by Red, White and Blues. And I didn't even get in contact with Mike. Mike just shared a Revival Black song one day and went, these are great. And I was like, thank you. And
I saw that. I remember seeing that post.
Yeah. So that was the initial contact of Mike. He just kind of shared it and went, like, I quite like this. I just said, thanks a lot. And then I started doing the backing vocals for him on his Shades of Grey project. And then I fortunately got to do that, the live show with him during lockdown, in between lockdown.
KK's. One day at KK's. Yeah, it was amazing. It was a great show. Great
team of people, to be honest with you. Everybody, again, the whole thing of everybody working hard, it was just across the board, everyone was just fantastic. I was just going, Jesus, this is impressive. But yeah, so it's been an absolute pleasure. And again, luckily I've had the creative freedom to do all this kind of stuff and put out music that I really enjoy. So it's been an absolute pleasure.
So there you have it, folks. We have had Dan from Revival Black. Before you go though, Dan, every time on the Scouser and the Scot, we always like to give one last question right at the end. Can you give us your links to all of your work, or any way that the guys can get into contact or listen to you play?
Yeah, absolutely. So for Revival Black, it's revivalblack.com on pretty much everything. Myself, I'm on Facebook or YouTube, or Facebook under Dan Byrne. Thank you very much for letting me plug that one. But yeah.
We'll put it all underneath. So everyone, all the links are down below. Check them out. These guys know what they're on about. They've been around. They know what they're doing. You can see them on all the videos on YouTube and stuff like that. I'll put all the links below. So make sure you check it out. One last request, Dan. Obviously, you've just finished recording the album. We would love to have you and the guys back on when you are releasing it. You know, it'd be a great pleasure to have you guys on. Hopefully we can do it in your studio, or we can come down and see you guys and share a pint with you.
That'd be great.
Do a live show, mate. I would love to do that. I'm sure, John, you'd love to do it yourself, mate.
Try to stop it.
Catch up with you and speak to normal people as well, like so.
Yeah.
We're not normal. We're not normal, mate. Jesus.
You know, you are normal. Yeah, but Dan, you are normal to us.
Oh yeah.
We're all in the same padded cell, mate. You can't get rid of us that easy.
Yeah, that's the quite literally.
Right, well, there you have it, folks, and it's over to John now. So,
well, there you go, people. Hopefully you enjoyed that as much as we've enjoyed listening to Daniel speak. And you know what to do until next time. Hit that cowbell and subscribe.